Okay. Today we are talking about the stigmas of some of the disorders that you guys deal with. And there's two very common ones that I keep hearing about. I've had this group going four years now. Kelly a little bit longer, I think, more like 5 or 6. And for as often as I read about some of the stigmas, I can never really get to any information where it's been some study or some authority that can give me validity behind that claim. And there's a lot of things that I personally share through experience that can be validated through your own experience. But I have to take that same approach with these two stigmas we're going to discuss today. The first one is that if you have lipedema, and I'm also going to include Derkham's and all the other sub conditions within the fat disorders community. The first one is that you cannot lose weight. Okay, before we get into the debate that will come with that topic. The second topic we're going to talk about is the other stigma, which is you should not or cannot tolerate heat. Fat, cannot lose it, and heat are very kind of general terms, and it really falls into that whole it depends category. I'd like to talk first about the I can't lose weight category. I do not have lipedema, but I, as a woman, at one point in my life, had to lose 60 pounds, wasn't happy about it, wasn't physically able to do it by traditional means. And that's kind of how I fell into these machines about 20 years ago. I've kept it off, but just because I'm slim and fit looking, I've got lifestyle issues. I suck at cardio. I have some poor diet habits, and it presents itself in other ways. So I as a woman, sometimes, we submit quickly. With lipedema in particular, it takes it a little bit further. And what I'm finding is I'm being told by medical professionals, by therapists, and whether there is validity to it or not, it is a common, I'm going to say, a stigma, because I'm still looking for the information that proves to me when so much experience speaks otherwise. So I'm going to start with what's on my screen. I'm going to start with Jen. Kelly's also with me today, and Kim. I'll put some links and some information on how to reach these gals, like I've done in past meetings. We're going to skip the big bios. I think everybody knows who you guys are by now. Jen, have you ever been told by a doctor or a therapist or someone in your life that because of your condition, you can't lose weight?
Absolutely. And not necessarily because of my condition, because we know that nobody will even acknowledge my condition. I remember going to the doctor after my son was maybe 1 or 2 and just so overweight and so inflamed and just like, what do I do? And he's like, you got to go work out. And when you work out, you got to sweat. And if you don't sweat, you're not going to lose weight. You're never going to lose weight by doing what you're doing. And I'm like, okay. So fat shaming to death. And yeah, it sucks. And so, but I have proved everybody wrong. My highest weight, I was at almost 200 pounds. And just self-care and research and just trying to, experiment with this and that and everything that comes along. And I'm sure all you guys are the same, but tried every diet known to mankind diet. And then I figured out, hey, this is what my body likes. This is what my body needs. So let's start feeding it these things. And I came across infrared heat sauna, I guess about 2 years ago.
All right.
And so, yeah, that's been my life changer.
Okay. Which is also part of our next category, but it's marketed as a way to lose weight. So why wouldn't that, when you're dealing with pain and many of the things that you're dealing with, why wouldn't you consider that, or at least research it?
Well, I mean, there's, like we said, the poor pitiful little me. Let's not try to take care of myself. And
Yep.
As a massage therapist, I see it in my practice daily. It's so frustrating. Clients come in and they're wanting help and they're smoking a cigarette, drinking a Coke, eating like crap. Oh yeah, I had bacon sandwich, and oh, by the way, I stopped at Sonic to have some chicken tenders before I came. So it's just like you have to help yourself heal.
Very
And
valid.
until you do that, you're not going to lose the weight. And I don't lose weight as a typical, we say, normal person would lose weight. I've lost 20 pounds ish, but it's taken me 2 years. But it's me figuring out what my body likes, what my body needs, and just trying to get over that stigma of you're fat, you can't lose weight. Well, yes, I can. I may not lose weight like you do. I may not do the certain, same things that you do to lose weight, but I've found out what helps my body, what it needs to lose the weight. And the scale, I don't ever, hardly ever get on the scale anymore. I really honestly measure it by my clothes. Sometimes I'll measure, but the scale, I never depend on that.
I think the scale can be like many things we do to ourselves. We know we're different. We don't want to measure ourselves to everyone else, but so why would we use the same term of measurement? And the same goes, I'm going to say before I move to Kelly next, for calories. Probably the most common calorie question I get is, well, how many calories do I burn, for 15 minutes of using my vibration machine? Well, how many calories do you burn in 15 minutes of going for a walk? Does pace come into it? Are you going up a hill? Are you 20? Are you 75? Like there's metabolic things that come into this. And I think sometimes, we go to our doctor and I mentioned this when we were sort of getting prepared for the call. There's a generational way of thinking. And a lot of our parents, our doctors of our parents' generation, we didn't talk about calories. Women didn't even go to the gym until Jane Fonda said it was okay to do so. So that mentality, we as a society have gone from, doing things physically to even our activity. The fact that we have to physically go to a gym to get physical activity speaks to a few things. So you've got to look to Jen's point, you've got to look at what's important for you and be more receptive of what you may tolerate. Just because this is what, the doctor in your case said, you got to go to the gym and you got to sweat. There's lots of different ways you can sweat without killing yourself at the gym and doing weights, if that's the true advice. But I've never met a doctor, no offense to my doctors out there, that was a nutritional expert as well, or a fitness. I'm not saying some of them aren't fit and take these choices themselves, but if you truly are looking for fitness support or nutritional support, just like your doctor specializing in what he specializes in, you should seek help elsewhere. And I think you'll also find, this is not for Jen, this is for those of you out there, no one's going to do this work for you. So you need to dig. You need, I started in the vibe machines when there was no such thing as the internet and eBay. So, with how much access we have to information nowadays, you don't have to spend a lot of time looking, not saying you're going to find the guaranteed solution, but answers are out there. You just need to invest some time, not only in researching ideas, but applying what you learn, because no one's going to do the work for you. Kelly,
it's going to change.
Yep. And it's going to change. Yep.
What worked for me 6 months ago may not work for me today. So it's just a constantly changing. You just have to continue with trying to figure out what works for you.
Well, I think once you start gaining be curious. I've said that in past sessions, be a kid. When we were a kid, we were so active and had the bodies to do it. But I think if you lose, once you start experimenting, you'll find, it's really not that scary. Not everything's going to be a disappointment. Not everything's going to be a success. And then sometimes maybe two things that didn't work on their own work quite nicely together. So I think once you start getting into the habit of trying new things, it gives you confidence to move forward, experiment, have different conversations. Whereas if you tried one thing and you gave up there, it is scary. You don't want to have a setback. You don't want to gain 15 pounds over the weekend or be unable to go about your day. But you have to try. No one's going to do it for you. Kelly, I think you have a similar story to Jen, but you've got a little bit more, you get some good science in there. You should share facts.
I'll speak first to the subject of calories, because I think, especially in a group of women who have tried everything to lose weight, there are many who do not eat enough food.
100%.
And I was one of those women. I think there's, this isn't the stigma we're talking about, really.
It's related. You can't lose weight. That would be a logical.
Related.
Yeah.
But I've talked to a lot of women, and they're under 1,000 calories a day. And counting calories with lipedema is not the way to go. Being obsessed with calories is not the way to go. But it's false that you have to be like under 100 pounds as a grown woman to have anorexia. That's false. You can be overweight and not be eating enough food. And that's what anorexia is. Your relationship with food is you're afraid of food. You're afraid to eat it because you'll gain weight. And so you restrict and restrict and restrict. And so, in my opinion, all these women that the world looks at and says, you're too fat and you shouldn't be eating that one thing that they see you eating, those women are probably not eating enough. And if you don't eat enough, you're not going to lose weight. And that seems counterintuitive. But if you're starving yourself, your body's going to hold on to every single bit that you put into it. And it's going to be inflamed because you don't have enough nutrition to run your body systems. And so I think women really need to step back, not to be obsessed with calories, because calories in, calories out. I mean, I know lipedema women who burned a lot of calories, and that is not the way. You know, over exercising for a lot of women who have Ehlers-Danlos or a thyroid condition or lipedema or lymphedema, it increases your inflammation. And so I think we have to look at it as it's not just the lipedema. It could be all these other things you're doing to yourself because you're scared of the lipedema. I mean, I've been scared of the lipedema late at night, sitting there terrified I'm going to get to, the furthest stage I've ever seen online. It's a scary thing to think about losing your mobility and being in all this pain. It's a scary thing, but you have to take some ownership and you have to take some control and you have to step back and say, okay, what can I do right now? And one of the things you can do is nourish your body.
Yep.
You have to nourish your body and you have to move, not be a super athlete, but also not sit in the same position in the same chair day after day after day after day. I mean, as a massage therapist, Jen knows the stagnant fluid it's got to be moved. You can't just sit there and sit there and sit there. You've got to move. That doesn't mean, move it where you are right now for how you can move. But I think there's a lot of women who say, I can't lose weight. I can't lose weight. And I've been there. I can't lose weight. And I still get from stress, from one thing I eat. It'll come right back. The weight will come right back. And it's hard to get it back off. But if you say you can't lose weight, but you're not taking the steps that are good for your body to optimize how your body functions, you won't lose any weight. That lipedema fat, it might be stubborn. And maybe you can't figure out how to get it off. But the inflammation and some of that other weight, there are ways to address it. But you might have to be creative and it might not look like it looks for other people for you. Mm-hmm. It probably doesn't look like it looks for everybody else.
You made a very good point, Kelly. You have to move from where you are today. That doesn't mean you get up and you haven't moved in forever and you go run a 5K. No, that means if you haven't moved, you get up and you walk across the room and you walk back. You just have to move. If you're not moving your fluid, your lymphatic fluid in your body, you're never going to lose weight. You have to remove those toxins. You have to get that fluid moving. You have to be breathing to start getting where you need to go.
When you move,
go from where you are today.
It's totally possible. It's totally. Before we get into I'm going to be the devil's advocate and say, you know, besides the stigma, there's treatments you're led to believe are the only option for you. Jen and Kelly both have believed. I'm going to say believed because Jen doesn't have an actual diagnosis. Kim has Durkheim's, but it's just the same thing in the Durkheim's community or the, you know, Ehlers-Danlos. Like, you know, there's this mentality that because you have this label and this diagnosis that you can't lose weight. But something Kelly mentioned earlier off camera is there's a very big difference in types of fat. You know, fat is just not fat. You know, there's obesity fat, there's lipedema fat, and there are differences. And what we're trying to say here, very crystally clear, based on the experience of the 4 women sitting here, which is years and decades of experience collectively. I'm sorry, you can lose weight. Sorry, you were lied to. You can lose weight. You can lose the obesity fat. And, you know, some of the steps that you will need to take are going to be like every other woman. You're going to have to find your path. You're going to have to look at the nutrition. I hate the 4-letter words like the diet, work. You know, there's things that mentally, you know, just demotivate us. And, you know, Jen found through heat, and we'll talk about heat next, but through infrared saunas, you know, not only are you moving the lymph and getting the detoxification, but many of you, we know that you're so below baseline that getting up on the floor and walking to the bathroom is the extent that you're able to do today. So we're not suggesting that, you know, yes, everyone can lose weight because Debbie can bike and Jen can use her vibration machine. We understand everyone's not there today, as Jen said. What we want you to start looking at is where you are and what can you do? Because you're going to be the one doing it. You're going to be the master of, you know, master yourself or be enslaved by others is one of my most favorite sayings. And if you allow yourself to be enslaved, whether it's by a mentality, whether it's by a diet, whether it's by, you know, something you bought on sale because Debbie said it was good for you, you know, you've got to be realistic in what you can do and if you're going to actually use it. But don't ever look at yourself in the mirror and say that you can't do that. That's coming out of somebody else's mouth. You just believe them. Kim, is somebody at the door? No. So Kim used to be a little rounder. I've probably known Kim the longest out of the 3 of you here. Kim used to be a little rounder, and Kim used to say things like, "Oh, Deb, I can't do that. No, I can't do that. I can't do that with no, I can't do that." And I'd say, "Well, please just try." And what I do love about Kim is she always is willing to just try. She likes to debate with me too, but the weight loss, she was well on her journey before I met her, but I have seen that continue in the time that I've seen her. So I'd like you to share a little. Obviously, you know, Kim's a big foodie, but you know, what was the switch for you? What made you finally decide that this was actually possible?
Well, I have a really long story, so I'll just give you the highlights or whatever. But like starting at 4 years old in pain, started out as a pain in legs, growing pains. I've been to doctors since I was 4 years old, literally trying to figure out why I'm so in so much pain at the end of the day. And so, you know, I've gone through the gamut of diagnoses as pain in legs, athletic legs, like it just kind of like all began in my legs, in other words, right? That's where the pain really began. But I don't have a swelling problem. Usually I do have diffuse spots of diffuse swelling. Like I have a hump that kind of puffs up here quite a bit when the inflammation's bad. I have like swellings in the insides of my finger joints there. That's just the weirdest fluid, and they're very painful when they're full of fluid. But like when my inflammation's high, nothing's okay. So I actually came to a situation in my life where I fell on my SI joint and I could barely walk, but I was a legal assistant and I hopped around the office for over a year trying to do my job because, you know, you have a mortgage to pay and, you know, you don't get paid to be off work. And they did have a long-term disability program. Thank goodness I was there long enough to qualify because I became permanently disabled. Eventually I couldn't type anymore, and a legal assistant types for a living and gets up and down out of her chair. So I couldn't get up and down out of my chair. I couldn't go to the printer. I couldn't type all day. I thought I had like, you know, tendonitis and all this kind of stuff in my hands because I've had tendonitis in all kinds of stuff because I've had pain with hands and arms and all kinds of things. But eventually it was like, I can't get back to work. I just can't. My entire system crashed when I had that fall in 2012, fell on the ice and pavement. And then when I got back in off the ground on my own, I was all by myself and fell down, hurt myself. So I get back into the house and then I sit in the chair and then I go to get back up again and something snapped. So I still don't know if one of my tendons from my HEDS snapped on my SI joint or not, but I have a bunch of lipomas that were taken off my SI joints when I was like 19 years old, 20. When I had a baby, my hormones, after I had my son at like 20 years old, I have all these lumps on my SI joints. That's where they actually originally started, that's the first ones that were found. Well, they cut them out and they said that I just got too fat when I was pregnant. I think we talked about this last time. But anyways, quick up to dates or whatever, like I've been fat shamed literally, like since I turned about 11, I started gaining weight and gaining weight and gaining weight. And then I would starve myself to death, go on low fat diets like you guys all. I went on every diet possible. And then like you end up getting like an eating disorder and you don't eat enough. I'm one of those too, Kelly. I don't, like, you'd think I ate a lot of food, but like I eat usually once a day and a snack and my fatty coffee in the morning. So that's my 3 meals. I eat like the fat load that I eat very high fat and I eat almost all animal products. I do eat a few veg and that, but I'm almost a carnivore, but I'm a ketovore pretty much. But I go through cycles and I just listen to what I feel like, and what I eat is whatever my body's asking me for. Like if I want to have a great big salad, I'll have a salad. If I want to, but I don't eat a lot of sugars and that. Like I've been doing this ketogenic diet now for about 4.5 years. And I lost 40 pounds. And that's what gave me the stability and the courage to stand up against all the gaslighting and the fat shaming at all the doctors. Like, I mean, I've seen so many doctors that I feel I have medical PTSD from going through those experiences. And every time I go near a new doctor, I warn them that I'm full of anxiety just because you're a medical professional and I am scared to be here, period. So we'll just get that out right away. Because when you're gaslit your whole life, like you're fat shamed and, you know, like I've even had medical issues ignored because they just thought I was fat and I was sitting on my ass. Well, I'm one of the most active people you would imagine. I don't sit all day long. I get up, I have my coffee, get on my vibe. I do whatever I can around the house. I go shopping. I go for a walk on the beach for a few hours. I come home, I make dinner. And after dinner, once I sit, don't ask me to do nothing else. But I do. I have a lot of activity. But when Debbie first met me, honestly, I was 190 pounds and I'm like not even 5 feet tall. So you can imagine how hard it was for me to move. And like, as I kind of like got to my diagnosis, I got back home and I actually searched for care because I had my labels. All I had to do now was find a doctor who would actually treat me and help me with some surgeries, because I do have lipomas that need removals and I've had many now. And I've also had major surgeries to reduce my pain modalities. But see, there was the difference where you go to a doctor and you're fat shamed, you're so used to that. And then you come across a doctor that actually cares for you and wants to help. Like, it was like, okay, what's up? you're suspicious at that point, right? But it was just, I found a good doctor that time. And thank goodness he was like BC Children's plastic surgeon, took me on.
Yeah.
They don't care for adults. So I was a special case that he could see. He ended up telling me that he could see that I'd been not treated well and I needed help because I was in a really dark place and a really bad place. Like I almost committed suicide at one point when I was being ignored for a medical situation that was a real medical situation, calcium deposits. So like I've had trauma through these doctors ignoring me just because they thought I was fat and sitting on the couch eating bonbons. So it really affects us in our mental issues, right? Like, yeah, okay, well, they just like, he accused me of having bipolar, but my psychiatrist that I was forced to see kind of like took that out in 10 minutes, like within knowing me. She's like, well, the girl's been in pain since she's 4 years old. You all just think she's faking it. And now you give her the fibromyalgia label. And here we go down that path. And if anyone knows what fibromyalgia treatment is like from medical professionals, like that was diagnosed on me in 1980. So like the trauma I've experienced just from having that diagnosis, honestly, I went to Emerge one time and they literally wouldn't help me get back to my car after I'd fallen down the stairs, almost broken my ankle just because it wasn't broken and I had fibromyalgia. They sent me out the door. I had to fare for myself to get to the car. I couldn't even walk.
Well, I want to.
Because you got fibro.
There's a term that you've said a few times there, and it's trauma. Trauma is,
yes, PTSD, medical
we impose it upon
PTSD.
ourselves, and guess what? Trauma, it gives you oxidative stress, which makes you gain the weight, and
inflammation, stress.
Just another, sometimes I know it's hard, but if we could take a step back and look at yourself through someone else's lens.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get hung up in our own shit that, we can't come up for air. And, I think another stigma, and I will cover this and take the grief of it, but I don't get it too big into a discussion about this, but I do want to briefly mention that you don't need, I'm not saying everyone doesn't need, but I don't want people thinking that surgery is their only option. And if gastric bypass is the first thing that's offered to you, then you probably, the more you can understand about what you're physically dealing with, I think not only is it going to give you the confidence, many of you've all talked about how it took you a period of time and hurdles to get that confidence. You have to go through experiences to gain confidence, not only in standing up for yourself, but in the information and in speaking in it fluently. 5-10 years ago, I wasn't this lippy on camera, but now that I have been forced to held to account to the amount of science that I have to absorb and defend all day long, it gets to the point where, well, I'm doing my homework and I'm doing research, not for myself, but to defend the sport of everything I'm learning from you guys. And if me, without having this condition or even knowing about it 3-4 years ago, can be as fluent as I am in identifying things that work and don't work for you, any of you can do this. You can just, it's very confidence gaining in empowering yourself with knowledge, and whether that means that you save yourself from that trauma at the doctor's office, the fat shaming at where, even the grocery store, and just, we live in a world where we need to start building each other up a little bit more. I think sometimes we get so hung up in the information we believe to be true, and we're not having those conversations face to face as fluently as, we're not going for the coffees and the luncheons. When you have these conversations solely online and you're dropping, there's no room for interpretation or experience sometimes. And I don't want to discount anyone out there that has put in the effort and is just frustrated and not getting the results that they want. But I really think it's a matter of trying something new, or to Jen's point, where it's switching gears. So I'm going to use that as a good excuse to switch gears. We all think to lose weight, we need to sweat and lift weights and run on bikes, or, go on vibration machines like Debby says. And, exercise is exercise is not the only way to become active and not it's not the only way to lose weight. The activity is important, not just for burning calories or whatever you want to refer to it as, but as Jen said, the lymph, it's going to help with muscular tension. It's going to help with the mental stress. There's other reasons that being active are beneficial to these conditions and all the psychology that comes with them. But seeking other ways to lose weight. You know, I have a lot of clients like myself back in the, I couldn't do a treadmill. I couldn't sit down in the toilet and get back up without my knee dislocating. Forget, you know, getting to a point of sweat.
Part of it is too, people look at someone who is not skinny and they're fat.
I know.
And the thing is, I have weight. My doctor, I've had multiple health professionals, like naturopaths to medical doctors. The medical doctors who actually took time to examine me have told me I have about 5 pounds of extra fat. Like literal, you have fat, obesity fat that makes people fat, and the rest of it is fluid. But I couldn't get a doctor to deal with lymphedema, because if you have lymphedema, it's in one arm and your arm is huge.
Yeah.
Or it's in one foot and your foot is
uneven. It's not symmetrical. And that's kind of when Dr. Karen first explained, because I didn't know what lipedema was. I just went to some conference in Dallas. That was what a crash course, right? I'm at FDRS. And I'm like, well, what's the difference? And she goes, well, one's fluid and one, like, you know, the difference between obesity and I guess I kind of did, but I think back to Kim's point to validate yours, I don't think people realize there is a difference between, no, I'm not saying everyone, but a lot of people think it's fat is fat. And that's so not the case.
No.
Right?
Definitely not in my body.
If the fluid sits there and you do nothing about it, it probably gets thicker and harder and more painful.
The other part of it is every pound on your body that's extra is not lipedema.
That's right.
I have thyroid. I have Hashimoto's. That makes you gain weight. If you have Ehlers-Danlos, it makes your digestion sluggish. That can make you have food reactions. That can make you have more inflammation. That can make you gain weight. If you have a sluggish lymph system, if your liver's sluggish, I mean, it's not because you have hunks of lipedema tissue in your body.
No, but you know, none of you with lipedema can lose weight. You know that, right? You can't lose weight, right? So I have 3 people on this wasn't a planned thing, but I was thinking about this the other day. Like, you're all not only advocates for, like, you've all kind of gone through the stigmas of you can't lose weight, which was a personal journey. No doctor did that for you, but the heat too. Jen and you and I haven't really talked in depth about the heat, but both Kelly and Kim were very, oh my God, I was freaking out, just waiting for did they die? Did they like it? Because the vibration machine didn't work out with Kelly. That's why she's you need that control group. Nothing's for everybody. But Kim was the one I thought for sure the heat was so bad of an idea. And you know, it's like anything, you got to navigate your own course and modify for you. So it's sauna season. And I think I answered more sauna machine questions than I do vibration machine sessions. So I want to talk the heat thing for sure. But Kelly was just talking about, you know, the stigma of, you know, she's only got 5 pounds of actual fat on her body, but because her size represents differently, you go ahead. It's your damn story. Bring Jen up to speed.
I was telling her, I've been examined from naturopaths all the way to the 1 or 2 medical doctors that I've actually gotten to do a real exam. And it's always like, you have 5 pounds of actual fat, but I have inflammation and I have, and it's different conditions. I think part of the myth is you are overweight because lipedema makes you look that way. And yes, partly, but also I have Hashimoto's, and low thyroid makes you have not be able to lose weight. Sluggish lymph makes you, you know, it all makes your body bigger, hold on to things. Yeah. Stress is one of my biggest things. I've had like personal traumas and gained like 25 pounds in a couple of days. Yeah. And that's not fat. But people look at people just put it all together and then say, I can't do anything about it because lipedema makes you not lose fat. And so I think that's one thing. And the other big thing that I always hear is there's nothing that you can do. Like, there's nothing you can do. If you don't have surgery, there's nothing that you can do. And,
you know, we're going through a generational change here too, so that I'm old enough, but that we've got a crowd of that 60, 70, 80 plus stepmothers are included in this equation where, you know what? The doctor was God. And that might have been in a time where you had a guy that, you know, he'd treat you whether you had a plan or not. We're not in that era anymore. And I think that's contributing to this. They're looking at you women coming in. The reason I shared that Dr. Amaron story, you know, is this the best treatment for you? Whether it's the liposuction, whether it's the vibration machine. So you look at a Kelly and all of the conditions that is, you know, what are the synergistic effects of all of these things you're trying to accomplish? You know, maybe you're specialized in Hashimoto's or maybe you're specialized in lipedema, but nobody specializes in everything except you, because you're the one living with it. Mm-hmm. So how do we change the mentality before we get into the stigmas and sound more markety? How do we get these women to just wake up and fucking realize that A, nobody's going to do it for them, and B, I know you're sick of looking at information and answers, but there's so much information and answers out there now. If you're not inspired within a month or two and you're not willing to participate, move on to the next group. There's lots out there. And, you know, I'm not even saying it's necessarily vibration machines, but, you know, maybe you just need to find what motivates you first, because it doesn't matter what the tool is if the motivation's not there, right? Not everybody can go see a Jen or a Kelly regularly. That's also part of it if someone's going to do it for me. But less and less of that is paid for now too, right? So
absolutely.
That's really,
well, and
you go,
you know, so I mean, I'm so against even going to the doctor anymore. And I just had a conversation with my husband last night. I said, when a doctor comes to see you, because they are so dictated by insurance, they have 15 minutes to sit in that room with you. Mm-hmm. 15 minutes. And then everything is dictated by insurance. So why am I going to go see somebody who is not even going to care about what's going on with my body? A, they don't have time to even sit there and listen to me. And they're dictated by freaking insurance. So I'm going to have to take care of myself and figure out what works for me and go down all these rabbit holes of, is this going to work? Is that going to work? Let me try this. Let me try that. Yep. And yes, it's a pain in the butt, but you have to
at least you feel, you know, at least you feel like you're trying. You know, I think that's part of the mental struggle is when you feel there's nothing worth trying anymore. It's got to be a pretty, and I don't know what your home situation is, Jen, but you know, everybody thinks we have all this free healthcare in Canada. I haven't had a benefit. Yeah. Like, I have Alberta healthcare, but I can't go to a dentist. I can't go to a car. You know, all of this is out of pocket. You know, I love my chiro. That's the only guy that if it's got to be really bad, and if I can't fix it on the machine with my voodoo, then he's the one. But it's $40 cash, which I sometimes have. But if I take my 2 kids with me and my husband, it's 100. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? They need it too.
Well, and our doctors, my doctor appointments, I have a GP or specialist, but in my GP's office, our regular appointments are 5 minutes. You have to book extra to do a 10-minute. Like, it's really, really clippity-boo out the door.
But Canada is very, I think with my group, sometimes people do look down upon my comments because they think I don't get it. It's just as bad, if not worse, in the States because it's all separate states, right?
Yeah, and it depends on insurance, especially.
And so, well, even the insurance company sometimes is dictated by products. You know, I've got things that, more of my medical billing. Yes, you can medically bill for a vibration machine if you've got a therapist that's got half a frickin' brain. When you're a neurosurgeon, they don't question you. So they call it neuro rehab, or they call it gait training, or they call it something that exists as a billing code. They don't go looking for a vibration machine. So, you know, St. Louis, the Children's Hospital there uses it as a pre-surgery and a post-surgery thing with these little kids that I work with. But even though he is able to physically bill, you know, maybe the family in Missouri doesn't have the same access, or not Missouri. I had Florida last week. I had a family that flew, did the surgery, but the billing, it's a different thing there. So even though their time at the hospital was covered, when they go back to their physical therapist, it's a different thing. They got it, but you have to go through the prescription and the diet, you know, what are you using it for? And, you know, these are for conditions like cerebral palsy that exist. So, you know, we're adding to the complication a mentality that you're fat, and we're shaming that. We're saying this doesn't work, and telling them right off the bat that surgery is really the only option.
One of the things we really have got to change our way of thinking. So we can't be getting mad because we go to the doctor and they prescribe pills, because that's what they're taught to do. You go to a surgeon, they're going to prescribe surgery. That's what they're trained to do. You go to a neurologist, they're going to do, you know, surgery. That's what these guys are trained to do. They're not trained to take care of us in a manner that they're not trained to take care of us. So the only one that is trained to take care of you is you. And
That's
so
why
you are going to have to figure it out to learn how to take care of you, because that's the only person that knows what's going on with your body.
What's that formula they always say, N equals 1 or something? I don't know what that is, but anyone heard of that?
I think I know what you're talking about.
You're
too.
the only one that can, you are the only experiment of you.
You're the only factor.
Yeah, we're the only factor, N equals 1 or something like that. But like,
and anyone
I've
can
had
learn.
to experiment so many ways. I'm still a work in progress. I still fight every day. Like, I have gained back 12 pounds of my 40-pound loss, and that doesn't feel very good, because I've been fat shamed my entire life by doctors, everyone around me. I'm just like so sick and over the fat shaming thing that I really don't give a shit anymore.
But you have to take a lot.
I even put a bathing suit on in the last few years and said, hell with it. I am going out and float. And I take my little floaty around my belt there, my swim. I can't swim because I have SI joint dysfunction from an injury due to the fact that I have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos and fell on my SI. And yeah, so I had to accept it and get through it. And, you know, you go through like a death when you really come down to it and figure out, oh my God, this is real. I actually have this shit. And oh my God, what am I going to do now? You're a mother, you're a wife, I'm a grandmother. I have so many instances because I've been in pain since I was 4 years old. So like, to not be diagnosed until 2018, it's been a hell of a life, let me tell you. And there's been all kinds of things that you wonder, like, where the hell did that come from? Oh my God, what the hell now? But when you really learn and do your research and your due diligence, you know your body, like you say. And that's when it's like every single thing I've ever got diagnosed with, except for the hypermobile Ehlers and the MCAS. I diagnosed myself because it took me 5 years to get to Dr. Herbst to get the diagnosis. So I fought the Canadian system for over 5 years. Like, I'm a warrior, and I succeeded, and it gave me the ability to stand against the fat shaming. I'm a advocate because I finally got the courage to stand up. That's all that happened. And when you find success in the ability to have courage to stand, even just to stand. I've been like curled up in this fetal position my entire life because I've been fat shamed. And it's like, okay, I lost 40 pounds. Now what's your bloody answer? Right? There wasn't any other answers that they could come to.
So infrared saunas, heat, you know, it's that time of year where everybody's talking about New Year's sales and all the New Year's resolution times are starting. But saunas, heat, you know, whatever we want to refer to it. I want to talk to the bigger stigma next, which is heat. where people with lipedema can't tolerate heat. And first, the curious little soul in me says, well, what kind of heat? You know I can't handle certain heat. I am going through menopause and I can give you heat of my own. Just stand next to me for 30 seconds at times. But then there's other times where, I can lay in the sun for 4 or 5 hours to the point where I fall asleep and have a sunburn. Other days I can't do that. So when we talk about heat and people having heat intolerance, heat in itself is, there's different forms of it. What I'd like to speak specifically to today is using the heat in the form of infrared, which is a specific type of heat. If you know about the sun, I can give you more information on infrared. But infrared is not only good at accelerating weight loss, but it's an awesome way to manage things like pain and swelling and sluggish lymph. And so heat is one of those things where when people say, oh, no, Deb, no, I can't tolerate heat. Well, what type of heat and what would you want to use it for? It's not always a weight loss thing. My primary reason for getting into saunas back in the day was everybody in my studio wanted something else to do beside vibration machines. So I did a little survey and said, well, what should I bring in? And I assumed everybody wanted saunas because it was a weight loss thing. But the number one reason people used to come to my studio back in the day and use saunas was arthritic pain relief. Had nothing to do with weight loss or gaining a sweat. It managed arthritis, which is inflammation in the joint, can be swelling. So all of you have some experience with heat in general. Maybe you can tolerate heat. Maybe you can't tolerate heat. But there's two things here, whether you can or can't. And with the infrared sauna, did you feel it was different than your past experience with heat? So I'm going to go again to Jen first because she brought up the infrared saunas and she's been using them for a while. So what do you got? What do you do with it? And why do you love it? And why were you not afraid to try it is what I'm very interested in.
So I live in Arkansas and it gets very hot and humid. And so anytime I tell people that I'm going to the infrared sauna, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't handle heat. Well, the reason I started trying it is because, way back when I met Debbie, I was at a point with my back that I really wasn't even working out. And so I started working out in the pool, walking in the pool.
Yep.
And was able to start moving, but I wanted something more. I needed, at my healthiest, I really liked kickboxing and I just like the contact sports.
Yep.
Can't do that anymore. So I wanted something where I could feel like I have worked out, and it wasn't cutting it at the gym. So we get this new place in town with infrared sauna workouts. And I'm like, oh, what's that? I like to be warm. Let's go try it out. And I started going and I was like, wow, like I feel so much better. Oh, wait, my back isn't hurting as much. My joints don't hurt as much. Well, when I put my legs on the coffee table, they don't hurt as much. And so as a lymphatic therapist and sweating, I know all the advantages of sweating. So then I started really kind of digging into this infrared stuff and like, why is this making me feel so good? Well, it's repairing my cells. What? Repairing my cells? That's insane. I've been told that's never going to happen for me. So it's honestly the fact that it's made me move better. It's made me feel better. And I can tell in my body now, as a lymphatic therapist, I have been hammered over the head so many times with, you have lipedema, you have lymphedema, you can't do heat. It's going to make you swell more. Initially, yes. When I did start going, I was swelling. But guess what? I kept going and I kept doing this and my body adjusts. And it really, really likes the infrared therapy. I'm repairing my body. I'm healing my fascia. There's so many things. It's causing me to increase my lymphatic flow when you're in the infrared heat, which is what our body needs. You've got to increase that lymphatic flow. You need to get rid of this crap, all these toxins that are in our body, for us to help get rid of our inflammation that we all have so much of. My husband has a horrible knee injury. Got him to start coming in and biking. And he was like, wow, my knee doesn't hurt. Look at this. You know, I can walk normal. And there's just so many benefits of the heat. And if you can't tolerate super high heat, where I go, you can adjust the temperature. So just start out low and slow.
You're
See how
physically,
your body's covered.
you're using a box style sauna?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's about the width of a yoga mat. You can probably fit 3 yoga mats in it, lengthwise. And I'm about 5 foot tall, and I can touch the ceiling of it.
Okay.
And so you go in there and you do your Pilates. You go in there and you do your isometric workout. You go in, and sometimes whenever I feel bad, feel like I'm getting the crud, I've been known to go in there and take my mat and just lay and detox my body, sweat it out, get all that junk out of my body. I mean, we could go into all the scientific details. However, it has helped me decrease my weight.
So I've seen it tolerate it. You could tolerate it, and it's helped you manage your symptoms. Essentially,
manage my symptoms completely. And it's when we go away, as in like, go to the beach or go to vacation, or go on a cruise, we go away, and I cannot wait to get back to my sauna.
It's awesome.
So I'm going to have to invest in me a sauna blanket, so now that I can just carry it with me everywhere I go.
Yeah, there's a heck of a lot more. Back in the day in my studio, and I'm in Canada, where in the summer it wasn't so popular. In the winter, I worked with a sauna company. Saunas are a much bigger deal in Canada, but I had a lay down, like a dome style, and I had 4 booths. The biggest one was about a 4-man, and it was crazy. Like, just people that I would never expect would even consider something like that. And what I used to find is I used to have a lot of girlfriends, like 2 girlfriends that would come together, and that'd be their yip yap time, or they'd meditate together. Mine weren't. You're probably in more of a facility. There's sauna rooms. My experience was more the sit down or the lay down style, more intimate privacy. And again, 20 years ago, when I started playing with these technologies, they didn't have eBay or Amazon. And there's just part of the reason I want to talk about heat today, and we'll get to Kelly and Kim's experience, because they're using different products than infrared. There's lots of product choice. And like I say, with anything, just because maybe you have all the money in the world and all the space in the world, doesn't necessarily mean the box style or dropping 10 grand on a sauna is the best way for you to use it. If you're dealing with really poor mobility, if you want to lay on your bed and watch TV, I want you guys to think about where you will use it consistently. So, if you can't get downstairs and your sauna's a box sauna, it's in the basement by your cold room that you visit once a month, I know you're not using it consistently, right? Yeah. And there is a difference.
So I have a client.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I have a client. Our temperatures got a little bit low for us, down in the 30s for a few days. And she comes to see me walking on a cane. She was so inflamed that I could not hardly even touch her. So I tried for maybe 10 minutes, and I was like, so at my facility where I work, we actually have a sauna dome, an infrared sauna dome.
Nice.
And so I stopped my treatment, and I said, listen, I said, we're not doing this today. We're going to go put you in the sauna dome. She had never done it before. And so I get her in there. I literally put her in there for 10 minutes. She texted me that night and she told me that she has never been so pain-free in years. And she said her next text was, I just ordered me an infrared sauna blanket. So, I mean, it's one of those things. You're just going to have to see if it's something that works for you. And for me, I don't want to live without it.
I want to add that Jen probably has a little higher tolerance for those of you that want to do this, but have had really poor reactions or really, there's a difference when you're thinking about what you might use, or even go try at a place. If you got somewhere locally, go try it before you invest. But when your head is in breathing the sauna air versus out in the lay down or the blanket styles, sometimes the tolerance is different. You know, you're breathing the room temperature air. And what you will also notice is the temperature settings on the big room style or the box saunas versus the blankets is much lower, typically for that reason. So in your dome at the facility there, or a lay down blanket,
Yes.
generally the operating temperatures are higher because you as the user can tolerate higher temps because you're breathing the ambient air. So that, you know, these are things to think about too. You know, maybe
Right.
you,
So
yeah.
our sauna box, I'm sorry, I can't convert Celsius to Fahrenheit. We use
No worries.
Fahrenheit here. So our sauna box goes only up to 130 Celsius. And then, but our sauna dome that we have, where you're talking about where your head is out and you're breathing the room temperature air, we cannot go all the way up to 196,
Yep.
I believe, Fahrenheit or Celsius.
Yeah.
So huge difference.
Yeah. And again, a preference thing. There's never one path, one tolerance. God, if everybody was exactly the same, we wouldn't be getting to have these chats and pick things apart. So Kelly's experience is a little different, but I know she's also a fan, and she also lives in a hot climate. So tell me why you decided that maybe that you can't be using heat was maybe not what it's worth.
Well, for me, I was just cold. I mean, when you have lipedema, everyone I've talked to with lipedema says like the backs of their arms are cold. Their thighs are cold. That's because nothing's moving. If you're cold, it means things are stagnant. Like the backs of your arms are not supposed to be freezing cold. And I started thinking, how do you move things that are stuck? You know, like if you have a hunk of butter and it's out of the refrigerator, what do you do to it? You get it to room temperature. You know what I mean? To soften things, you heat them. And so it just started making sense in my mind because I'm my own guinea pig about everything. I'm kind of not afraid to try anything because the not trying for me means that it's going to be true that I'm going to progress. And another stigma, lipedema does not always progress rapidly till you're at the end of the worst case you've ever seen online. That's
Agreed.
not always true.
100%.
I've been like stuck at stage 2 for ever since I've had lipedema. But I'm like this heat thing. I used to, before I had this progression after my daughter was born, I always was in the infrared sauna. And then it was like, you can't be in the heat. You can't even take a hot shower, you know? And I was like that, but I feel good in the shower. That's what I started thinking. It's like, I relax. My arms aren't cold. I just feel better. My pain is lower. And so I started thinking about all of it. And it didn't make sense for me to always put myself in a cold environment when heat has always made me feel better. And I've known about the benefits of infrared sauna in general. It penetrates through a few layers of your skin, not just like you go out in the sun and it heats the outside of your skin and makes you sunburn. Infrared doesn't do that. It's a deep penetrating heat that feels different than if you're just outside in hot weather. And it heals, like Jen was saying, it heals that tissue. And so it started making sense for me. You know, it relaxes your body. And so I had also been trying to lower stress. And you can't always lower what life throws at you. It's out of your control, but you can help your body relax. You can put yourself in that mode. It slows your heart rate down when you're in that heated environment. It does so many things for you. It slows down your breathing. It makes your brain calm down. Like all these things that help your body heal besides the infrared itself. There's all these other benefits. And so, like Jen said, she started using heat. Initially, there's inflammation because your body sends extra fluids. It sends all this healing stuff. It increases your circulation. And so when all that stuff goes to all these places of your body that are stuck and frozen and fibrotic, yes, there's going to be more and it's going to make you swell. But your body can fix that. It can fix that. You actually, not expertise, I don't want to use that word. My advice is to try to switch your thinking and think about all these therapies you're doing. If you get some inflammation, it means it's doing something to send healing to those places. So if you try a sauna at a gym and then you gain inflammation, don't say, well, that didn't work for me. It made me have inflammation. We've got to try to, sometimes inflammation is not good. You know, if you eat a food and you gain 2 sizes, you probably should back off that food. But if you do some kind of therapy that's good for you and you have some inflammation, that might be a temporary thing, and it might be an indication that it's actually helping and sending things to where you need them for your healing. But I had similar results as Jen with heat. And now I use it as a tool instead of being afraid, because it increased mobility. It helps me do more things. Because I have grown kids, but I had a child late in life. So I have a little girl and we homeschool, and I can do all the things now that I couldn't do before. My recovery times are much improved. So I used to go do something and come home and rest, like walk in the door, get in bed, and not move for probably at least 24 hours. And I think sometimes when our bodies are in this chronic illness situation, we only want to lose weight. And I think sometimes that's the last thing our body is going to do. We have to look at all these other ways that we're healing first, instead of just, I haven't lost the weight, I haven't lost the weight, I haven't lost the weight. Because I've been stuck where I am for a few months and I can't, no matter what I do, it's not reducing, but there's all these other benefits. And so sometimes your body will go through a season where it's like, okay, I lost a little bit, I can't lose anymore, but keep track of all the other things your body's doing. You have less pain, you have more mobility, you can participate in life, you don't have joint pain, you're not achy, there's all these ways that you can gauge your health. Well, and maybe when you get through that healing, then your body will be able to lose a little bit more weight.
I just wanted to make a comment really quick. I'm going to have to jet out of here because we've got to go celebrate my daughter's birthday. But
okay, for sure.
So just changing the mindset and talking about the lymph, because we know that's what's moving things out of our body. Start thinking of it this way. When your lymph is cold, it is in more of a gel-like state. When it's hot, it's more fluid. So just think about a spaghetti noodle. A spaghetti noodle is rock hard and it's going to break. It's so brittle. And that's how our bodies feel. And then we give them the infrared heat, and all of a sudden, this lymph turns into more of a fluid state and is moving more freely and moving away from these areas that are stuck and fibrotic. And it's like all of a sudden, I can move again. So it's absolutely just, we got to change our mindset.
It's almost logical, you know, and sometimes with these conditions, it's almost more comfortable or keeps it at arm's length if with analogies. Thank you, Jen.
Peace out, you guys.
Happy birthday to your
Awesome.
daughter.
Thank you.
The butter analogy, you know, it's totally logical. You know, I'm not a big microwave fan, but sometimes you got to put it in the microwave and melt it before you can spread it on. But what happens when you try to spread cold butter on a piece of bread? You tear the bread. What happens when the massage therapist or, you know, and some of these tools we're using nowadays, you know, what happens if you try to drill your massage gun into it? You know, I think a lot of it is, and you said this in an earlier session, when a couple months ago, when we spoke, Kelly, as well, inflammation, sometimes it's something to be scared of and pay attention to, but sometimes it's just the part of the process of healing that our body goes through. And what you said in the session last time I want to raise is, you know, whether it's an infrared sauna, whether it's going to see a massage therapist like Jen, whether it's doing a new activity for the first time, when your body is going through the process of healing, inflammation is part of that process. And this, for the same reason you get inflamed when you exercise. You know, some of you dealing with MCAS, when we get to Kim next, you know, I've had some women break out in hives and run to emergency because they use their vibration machine, probably for too long. But, you know, if you know how your body reacts to an exercise bike, in the form of inflammation, how it presents may vary between bodies, but it's probably pretty likely that you would have that same reaction using an infrared sauna or heat wraps or something. But if you never took it past the first or second try, you're not going to see, you know, things do improve. And as for many of you that are dealing with that super sluggish, rock hard lymph, it might take a little bit longer for things to start loosen up and becoming to that gel. And for any of you that are using vibration plates or saunas, you know, sometimes the inflammation comes also, you know, it's great that you've committed and the mindset is there and you're trying new things, but sometimes we consume ourselves with trying too many things. So I will caution, if you're looking at trying heat, and that wasn't the case with Kim because I had her trying so many things at once. But if you are super sensitive to heat or you have MCAS and you tend to react to exercise and heat in the form of an allergic reaction, what would you normally do to mitigate that before you do the activity? So whether it's an anti-inflammatory, whether it's maybe reducing time or intensity, I just want to caution you to expect your body to react very similar to the influence of infrared and heat as it would to activity. Those symptoms tend to come to the surface the same, so manage and be proactive in the same way. Inflammation is absolutely a process, you know, that my athletes at the gym that train would call it the tear and repair. Yeah, your body tears muscles when you're lifting weight and exercising, and it repairs it. So tear and repair is simply two words to describe what we're talking about, which is inflammation. And that sometimes, to Kelly's point, if it's food or medications or you know, there's bad inflammation that presses on. But if you've had a bad experience with heat, you had intermittent swelling, it might have been a short-lived thing. And it's one of those times where we absolutely recommend revisiting, but reduce time or intensity. You know, the biggest, just like the vibration machines with heat, just because the sauna has a preset timer of 60 minutes, I don't necessarily, this isn't one of those times to stick it out and push through to get into that dress for the weekend. Okay. You're going to pay for it short term. And that's my experience always.
And can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Before Kim talks. The other thing about those of us with lipedema, if your lymph hasn't been moving, there's a lot of junk in your lymph. because your lymph is supposed to take that stuff away. And so you don't need to go by somebody else's recommendation who doesn't have some kind of chronic illness as to how long you need to stay in a heated situation, whatever your choices for how you do that. You need to start small. And I had to learn the hard way that I always just want to jump in. More is better. Let's just go and let's do it. But if you have all this junk that's been frozen in your tissues and in your lymph system, and you do, if you have some kind of illness that makes lipomas or fibrotic tissue or sluggish lymph, you do have that stuck stuff in your body. When you start using heat, when you start moving your lymph, it can make you feel bad, you know? And I've heard people say, well, no, I was tired. I was too tired after I used that sauna. I was too, like, I just felt sluggish. I had a little bit of brain fog. I had this or I had that. You need to start really slow. And by really slow, it might be 5 minutes instead of an hour. But don't jump in there like you're an Olympic athlete gonna use the sauna, because you'll regret it. Be gentle with yourself and be smart and own that tool. That's a tool for you to use. That tool, and someone who knows nothing about your condition shouldn't dictate how you use it and what works for you.
I want to add the same goes for whatever instructions may come in the book. Again, back to vibration machines, I know, but it's the same common questions I get with saunas. How long? But with saunas or heat tools, maybe it's the leggings. You know, it's not always a sauna, but temperature is not universal. And I know in many of these books, I don't know where these numbers come from, but you know, you guys go to these pages and general consumers, you know, what's the optimal setting for this, or what's the best program for that? And you know, there isn't. And with heat, you don't need to be at a certain temperature to sweat. Your sweat factor, and when you decide to sweat, is based on what your body decides. You know, I've got some people that can't take it over 100 degrees. Yet I've got some people that have got to put on 3 sweatsuits and they're at max temp all the time. How your body reacts to this stimulus, just like exercise or a vibe machine, is going to be unique. And to Kelly's point, be conservative. If you do want to go longer, one of the suggestions maybe you just need to get away from your kids and they don't know you're in the sauna. You know, there's different reasons people want to go longer, not just for calories or what have you. But what I do with a lot of my chronic users and especially my pediatric users, when I'm working with little itty bitty babies or infants and toddlers, they're littler. The heat penetrates them quicker. They heat up faster. Is step in part way. So if let's say, I don't know, I'm just going to pull a number. If you got your sauna set for 120, get into it at about 80. Warm up with it the rest of the way. I think sometimes, especially if you're post 50 and you're having flashes like me, if you leave that thing and you do 20 other things and get into it at full temp, it's like walking into a heat wave. Yes, maybe that's a good way if you want to sweat quicker. But if you're looking at a longer session or you're just starting out, get into it at a lower temperature or warm up with it the rest of the way. And you'll figure out, you'll know what's too hot or not too hot real quick. But I used to do that with my kids all the time when they have a cold or a flu. They want to be in the sauna. It's their own decision. But I'll get in with them part way, warm up the rest of the way, maybe get into a book. And then I can get a 20-minute, half-hour session, but maybe it's only the last 5-10 minutes at those intense temperatures, especially if you're using it for pain management and those type of things, where you're still getting the benefit of the infrared technology. It doesn't need to be operating at full temperature to receive those benefits. That's absolutely a tolerance thing. Okay. And Kim is a good example of that. So I'm going to switch to Kim. Kim's got another type of heat. We've kind of primarily been talking about infrared, which she now has a blanket. But before Kim got into the blanket, she used some of the air compression leggings that have a heat option. And it's a personal choice. It's a customization. But I think the real epiphany started coming on the blanket. So I would like to just turn the gears to Kim and you can share your stigmas and prove me right.
Well, I've got a few things now, like I guess I should just say I do struggle with any kind of heat, outdoor heat. If it's too hot in the house, I'm losing it. I'm running. Get me out of here, out, get me a fan. I have to have instant relief because I don't know if it's just me, but I literally don't sweat. I burn. So I have flushing, either whether it's from my Durkheim's, my MCAS, whatever causes this flushing. I have abated it a little bit through something that I eat every day in my coffee, and that's my MCT oil. It's 99.2% C8 caprylic acid. So I don't have a lot of the inflammatory part of coconut oil. Mine's like almost all C8, which is very anti-inflammatory. It doesn't cause inflammation as much as some of the others. But that actually we discovered was taking away some of the heat problems that I was having. Like, my God, I'd sit down and start eating and I'm just literally turn on fire. It kind of starts at the feet and rolls up the body. And I literally, my entire chest, arms, everything just turns beet red, but I don't sweat. So I don't get that. And it's literally, you have to run away from yourself. You have to get cooled down. Because like, if I sit in the chair and have one, it literally burns my back so bad that like, it just sends me flying if I don't get away from my heat that's contained in it, right? Like I have to sit up at least. But like, I have heat problems for sure. And that's why I was very reluctant to have anything that had heat. So my first experiment was I call them my legs, and they're the compression legs, and they have heated knees, which I have trouble with my aching arthritic old knees. Yeah, I do have Durkheim's lumps and things all around them too, but though that's not my biggest problem. It's the actual arthritis. Like Debbie says, we're getting older and we have a lot of this stuff. But then the gentle heat that wasn't too hot, it just helped when I'm getting squished. Everything's moving, from the compression. So of course you warm up anyway, right? Your whole body's warming up from being squished. And then the knees gave a little heat to relieve the pain part. And then a lot of the times, anything to do with the heat is generally more used for me in the winter, because I do struggle with feeling like cold, and like I just am in more pain in the winter. Spring and summer, I do way better with my body because of how far I've come. Do you know what I mean? But then I also have the leg or hand massager, and I have very arthritic-y kind of like problems with pain and nerve pain in my hands too. So when I stick that in, and I have a heat option, I have the vibration option, and it's squishing my hands. So like I'm massaging my legs all the way, like from my feet all the way up to my hips. I have the full legs. So like once you warm up, your body does feel better. Like I don't have lipedema, but I do still have problems with my lymphatic system. It's a related thing for us all with these fat disorders, connective tissues. And then so recently in the last year, I got my sauna blanket and I was hesitant again. It's like, God, I don't know if I'll be able to use it. What's the sense of it? I'll be like sweating, I'll have to run. So there's different temperature gauges. So I actually can only use it on the low range. I think it's 113 or something. But that thing, I get into it in my recliner. I actually set it all up, unzip it, and then I just kind of zip it back up once I sit down, stick my arms out of the thing, because if I go into it completely up to my neck, I'm too hot in a matter of 5 minutes. So I stick my arms out the zipper holes, and then if I get too warm, I unzip it a little further and lay it down so that it's just covering most of my body. So it's really flexible. And because I can have the lower temp, I'm not burning skin and on fire feeling, right? But there's something about that sauna blanket. Something I wanted my whole life was a hot water bottle that just covered my whole body. Because I've used heat to soothe my pain my whole life. A hot water bottle, heat pads, like I still have these long heat pads, like everywhere I go, there's bean bag ones, like I constantly need them everywhere. And I'd be having, oh, okay, this piece fits here. This piece fits. Like, why can't they just make one that fits the whole body? Well, then Debbie showed me the sauna blanket. And I'm like, oh my God, that's my jump in water bottle.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
really, it was a need that I've had my whole life, truthfully. And now I can actually manage it. But you're right. I had to start out slow. I had to kind of build up a tolerance to even take the low temperature, right? And even still, if I'm not doing it regularly enough, which I don't with the spring and summer, I tend to, when fall comes in, man, my body screams for the soothing. And it's like, okay, so it's like a whole day thing, like trying to do your self-care, right? Oh my God. It's the, you know, the dietary stuff in the morning, the vibe plate. Then I move into movement outside or nature therapy or distraction at the ocean. Like I'm in a constant lifestyle of distraction therapies. Truthfully, that's how I get through my days. And through doing that and building strength on my plate and balance, I don't fall as much at the beach. I don't trip and bang into as much things, but like the heat has always been my friend, but not too much heat. Do you know what I mean? Like I can't stand humidity. Like if I start to sweat, I might as well just shoot myself because it really takes a lot to make me sweat. Like even exercise, like I'll just burn. Eventually, maybe, yeah, I'll sweat. But on the general rule, like I don't know why I don't sweat.
Well,
So
and that there are conditions out there. I'm not a big sweater per se, but what I notice, okay, lipedema and Derkham's, you know, as far as I know, there's no diagnosis in this body. But I, as a woman, have found, you guys are gonna think I'm crazy, but the number one reason the post 50 woman used to come use saunas in my facility was to get their flashes over and done with. It
to
brings them
just go
on.
in and bring them on, you mean?
Get them over and done with. And we only found this. Well, this is one of those things that, you know, a menopausal woman in those days when I was 40, not going through it, I wouldn't even suggest it. But I had one that had arthritic pain. And the nurses here at that time, they were like a different, so they'd, you know, do 6 shifts in the morning, then they'd get 6 afternoon, and then 6 evening. And it just so happened that the one gal, I even had to go in early. My sauna would be so cold in the morning. I'd have to go in early just to warm it up so that when she got there, so she was coming before she'd go to work. And after a couple of weeks, she come in one day and she goes, oh my gosh, guess what's happening with my flashes? And I'm like, I'm thinking, oh, they're getting worse. I'm so sorry. She goes, no. She goes, the first couple, I was freaking, but she's so hung up on the weight loss. She stuck it. But what she was finding was they were getting less and less. And then she wasn't, the only time she was having the flashes was in the sauna. So I don't know if anyone else, but I myself now, 10 years later, have just started using the booth sauna again. I've had this set up about 2 weeks. All of a sudden, the temperatures have gone from a balmy, the grass is green, to where's my parka. Really big difference and since I've gotten slimmer, I'm colder all the time. But what I'm finding getting back into my it's bringing my bloody flashes on, but they're not waking me up at night anymore. So there's a bazillion different reasons, but with the saunas, the biggest thing, just like your vibration plates, is you can modify the temperature. If it's leggings that you're using, localized heat, many of you can tolerate localized heat, but I think the topic, the stigma we're dealing with today is I can't go have fun at the beach because with lipedema, you can't tolerate heat. Or I can't go take a hot yoga class. That's a big thing up here in Canada. I don't know if the whole place is just a sauna and you go do your yoga.
I did try that, believe it or not, before I ever even knew I had any of these things going on. And honestly, it almost killed me.
Kim to me would be someone that I would recommend. If somebody was phoning me and saying, what sauna should I try? the beauty of these blankets is not only can most people afford to get into one, but they are portable. And the second question I get from most of you is, well, what can I take on my trip? Or I can't take my machine with me. What? So that they fold up to small, and again, money aside, they're just a convenient alternative. And for those of you that really are super sensitive and have had bad experiences, I recommend trying something where the head's out. So whether it's the dome sauna, whether it's the blanket, or if you do want to consider a box sauna or trying that experience, most facilities or chiropractic offices, places that have a sauna where you could physically try it, and don't just give it one session. Give it two, just like a workout. You're never going to get the right dosage, would be the medical, but you don't know that the routine, the approach, the time, the setting, the beauty with the infrared temperature is, and I would recommend absolutely starting on the conservative side, like Kelly suggested, get in. I think the booth, when I got it, the preset temperature was 104 Fahrenheit, which, to be honest, is more than enough. I have infrared in my PEMF mats. So there's the lay down mat and the seated mat. I had that puppy going at about 155 last night. I had to turn it down. My butt was burning. Whereas the night before I had her up to about 160. So even though I'm not dealing with lipedema, sometimes it's just a preference. Sometimes I want more heat. Sometimes I don't feel like sucking it up because my sciatic isn't that bad. So there's different reasons we apply heat. There's different reasons we enjoy heat. The time and the temperature are really something I just want you to be super conservative on. Just because you were told and led to believe something, it doesn't necessarily dictate the long-term outcome of who you are and who, this isn't a death sentence. No one can predict who you're going to be 20, 30 years down the road, let alone on a biological level. So we if anything with these chats that we do, I hope to motivate you to experiment within your realm of comfort, be consistent and conservative in starting them. And, it's easy to overdo these things. So just have less time, less intensity. If you've got a tolerance for heat, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should take on more either. Anytime you're trying anything new that includes applying heat, you should discuss this with your doctor. There may be other things that, this is an intervention no different than starting a membership at the gym. You want to make sure that there are reasons that it is appropriate to do this. And if you are looking at using heat or integrating it into part of your self-care and you're on certain medications or you're doing other treatments, we just want to make sure that it's the best complement. Infrared heat in particular is it is one of the oldest, most researched alternative therapies out there. For those of you that are afraid of trying infrared heat, have you ever seen a preemie ward at a hospital and seen the incubators that the little babies are put into? Those are little infrared saunas. Mm-hmm. So when a premature baby is born, the closest thing on the planet that can mimic your mom's womb is a little baby infrared sauna. So there's I'm not suggesting that they're putting them in there at 150 for an hour and a half. There's moderation in temperatures, there's humidity, there's obviously more science behind it. But infrared it has been around for a very long time, just as long as our sun. So do a little bit of reading, a little bit of research. The leggings that Kim uses, the blankets, the saunas, these are all just modern inventions that harness the healing benefits of a very small spectrum of the sun. Whether it's a heat bag like Kim's using or a heat bag or a foot bath, if you've used heat in the past and had a bad experience, maybe it's just a matter of changing your approach or maybe just trying it again. Don't give up on something that didn't work 20 years ago. So the two big stigmas today, I've just had so many questions this month. Maybe it's all the sales and people looking at products, but just because you have a fat disorder doesn't mean that you cannot lose weight. It's very often just the approach and the support. In a lot of cases, you need that motivation and you need that team. And the other stigma we discussed today is you cannot tolerate heat if you have a fat disorder. And many of you cannot. Many of you have had poor experiences, but heat is a very big general term. And today we talked about a few versions of heat that may work for you and may help you manage your symptoms, but it may also help you with other goals like weight loss or pain management. There's never any just one thing or one benefit to some of the things we talk about. So thank you, Kim. I know Kelly and Jen had to get going. It's later in their world. We're more West Coast girls. And I wish you all a good Friday evening.
You too.
And a good weekend, and don't work too hard and stick with it. You know, maybe you'll look. I gotta say, just on a side note, I've been talking with Kim 3-4 years on these types of calls now, and for me to do a call this late in the day, and for her to be walking around, I know she's probably thinking about what dinner's going to be already, but just
Exactly.
you know, even earlier when you were doing this, like your stamina and your energy levels are just so more present. So,
Oh
you know,
yeah,
but
I'm
this,
so much better than I used to be.
but you're doing the work, and let's not even call it
Yeah.
the work. You know, Kim's doing the self-care, and nobody's going to do that for you.
Nope.
We hope these little chats, if anything, offer you some motivation and let you know that, you know, try something new. It may just be the recipe or the missing ingredient in that recipe that you've been looking for. And reach out to any of us with questions. I am going to put links at the end of this on how you can navigate and find each of us. If you have questions specific to the stigmas we discussed today, and I didn't ramble over those already, please just drop a comment if you did have a question we didn't discuss today, and we'd be happy to get back to you on that as well. Thank you, Miss Kim, for joining.
Hey, see you later.
Have a great rest of the weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
You too. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.